Hey guys, Ziendo here with the Bringing the Boomkin tutorial. This will be for Boomkin PvP only. It's going to be a pretty simple guide. I'm going to do a 6-part series. This is going to be the first of those 6, and this one is going to be probably one of the most important to most people, and that's going to be how to do damage as a Boomkin. I'm going to go over talents, builds, glyphs, rotations, which you won't have much of any, your stat priorities and reforging, and of course your gems and enchants. We can also go over professions, but those are something that you could just choose at that point. And you could pretty much go with anything at this point in MOP. There is 2 or 3 professions that outdo the rest, and I'll go over those as well. Anyhow, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with talents. So as you'll see in my talent tree that I just pulled up here, I, of course, in the first tier, you have 3 choices. You have Feline Swiftness, Displacer Beast, and Wild Charge. Displacer Beast is the number 1 and probably only ability you will ever have in PvP. Unless they nerf it, there's no point in taking anything else. Displacer Beast, it teleports you 20 yards. It removes your targeting, so whoever's targeting you, they're not targeting you anymore. And it gives you a sprint boost of 50% in any form that you're in. So you can immediately switch over to Boomkin and just start running in 50% increased movement speed while casting. So there's no point. You don't even have to stay in cat form, so that's awesome. It's a great escape mechanism, and its cooldown is only 30 seconds. So it's pretty much always up whenever you need it in a bind, and you can use it to, like in Arathi Basin, jump off of tall buildings and land on the ground. And overall, just do some crazy parkour shit with if you need to. It is probably the most versatile ability that you'll have in that tree. Wild Charge could be argued, but that's more for Feral and Guardian. As far as being a Boomkin, you would use it maybe in PvE, but Feline Swiftness normally comes out above everything in PvE. But we're not really going to get into that. Wild Charge, it's great because you can use it all forms. It's also good because you can use it for escapes, of course, because you get your disengage for balance. You get your bound forward for when you're in your travel form, and you also get your cat form, which will daze the enemy, and it also pounce on them, but it's really, overall, it's not the best ability. Displacer Beast is your ability. That's the one you want to use. You're not going to be playing as offensively as you think you are. You'll play more defensively unless you're in a big team fight and you're backed by a bunch of healers, or you're forced to kind of, sit in a corner and, growl at people, basically. Alright, so that's the first tier. You want to always pick Displacer Beast. There's not really an exception for that. There's nothing you can really do about that. Displacer Beast is definitely the number 1 choice for PvP at this point. Now, we go to the second tier, which are level 30 stuff. You're going to take Nature's Swiftness. I know there's probably an argument, Renewal's pretty good, blah, blah, blah. I can use Renewal with Might of Ursoc. I used Might of Ursoc and Renewal for a very long time, but overall, that's awesome, and that's good for duels, but overall, Nature's Swiftness comes out ahead every time. You can use Nature's Swiftness to instant cast a heal on yourself, which I know it's not 30%, but if it crits, it can hit you for, 180k, 200k, if you're, depending on what's going on around you. And Nature's Swiftness you can also use very, very offensively, so you can use it for Cyclone, instant cast Cyclone, instant cast Roots, and basically instant cast anything that it says, but you can use it offensively or defensively, so it's much more versatile than Renewal. And it's only got a 1-minute cooldown, whereas Renewal has a 2-minute cooldown, so it's not as useful. Renewal's not as useful as you might think over Nature's Swiftness. And those of you that are using Renewal now, trust me, go Nature's Swiftness. You'll adjust a lot faster than you think, and just kind of mess with it. And then the last one, of course, is Cenarian Ward. That's really more for Guardian. And I don't even know if Guardian uses it at this point. I'm pretty sure that Nature's Swiftness is using every tree right now, but I know Cenarian Ward's pretty good for PvE Guardian, but it's shit for PvP Boomkin. It just doesn't give you the versatility that you need to operate on the battlefield. Think of Nature's Swiftness like Presence of Mind for those of you that have played mages. It's just basically an instant cast, whatever the hell you need at the moment. So Nature's Swiftness, that's the way to go for the third tier. Now we go to for the second tier. Now we go to our third tier. Our third tier is Fairy Swarm, which when you cast Fairy Fire, it slows the target by 50%. That can be debated. Whether or not it's very useful, you'll normally only use that, and you'll use it in your feral form because you can just cast it. It'll slow them if they're ahead of you. It's very useful if you're playing feral. It's pretty useful if you're playing guardian. But you have two other choices that are a lot better. And one of those is mass entanglement. In 5.2, as you know, they reduced the cooldown to 30 seconds, so it actually made it a viable ability. It spreads the roots amongst 5 total targets, so whoever you hit, just make sure they're around other people, and you can root multiple people and screw them over. Now, while that is a strong ability, it's really mostly used, you'll use it in arenas more than anything else, probably. You'll also use it in maps, like, it's not as useful as Typhoon, but you can also use it in Soul Shard Mines in case there's a plethora of druids or knockbacks already, and you can use it in other situations. It's very useful in duels over Typhoon, but Typhoon overall is probably your best ability, and I'll tell you why. Typhoon, well, a lot of you are like, why the hell do I need Typhoon over Mass Entanglement? Typhoon has a knockback, it knocks them back, and it is huge, 30 yards. That's quite a ways. I've knocked people off of buildings 30 yards away, and they don't even know that I'm hitting them. You know, it's a very, very long range on the knockback, which gives us a huge advantage because a lot of people don't expect it right away, and they don't expect to be getting hit as far away as they do. It also dazes them for 6 seconds. Now, dazing is different than slowing. Dazing means, you know, it used to knock people off their mounts. It doesn't anymore. But, you know, dazing is, there's no way to remove that slow. Unless, even if you shapeshift, you can't remove daze. Daze is there. So, you know, it's very strong in that aspect. It also dazes all targets, so it's really good against stampeding targets, where they can't use, you know, wild charge or whatever against that. And they can't, or, I'm sorry, Master's Call. And it's also very, very strong against DKs and any other kind of caster class. You can also use Typhoon. It's very, very strong, and the way I use it probably the most in an arena situation or an RPG situation, you can use it as an interrupt because it pushes them back. The only time you would run into an issue is if they can cast while running, which would be, you know, warlocks, shamans, mages. Pretty much most caster classes can do some type of cast while running, so it doesn't affect them as much, but it does affect us killing healers. And we can get a clutch little interrupt right there in case somebody else can't get it, and you know, win. So that's what we're looking for. So Typhoon's definitely the strongest in the tree, but you can switch out between Mass Entanglement and Typhoon, but I don't really ever switch because, like I said, Typhoon is definitely the strongest in the tree. Now, our 60 talents. 60 talents, you have Soul of the Forest, Incarnation, and Force of Nature. Now, Soul of the Forest, mostly used for PvE, not really used for PvE. It's not really used for anything. I used it for Feral back in the day, and it was pretty good for Feral, but that's about it. I think you might use it for Guardian, but Incarnation overall is probably the best ability, at least for Boomkins, because you get balance. It's chosen of Elune, and it proves your Moonkin form, and you gain a 25 increase to Arcane and Nature damage as long as you're Eclipsed. So if you're not Eclipsed, then you're not getting that 25% increase. So don't pop it unless you're Eclipsed, guys. And if you pop it and you go out of Eclipse, so you pop that with your Celestial Alignment, then you're in Eclipse, obviously. But as soon as that wears off, you need to be popping your Astral Communion to get your Eclipse back up as soon as possible. That way you maximize the amount of damage you can do in Incarnation. So, Incarnation, very, very strong, really good ability, probably the best. It is the best in the tier right now. But there is one other, and that's Force of Nature. Force of Nature, it summons Treants. The Treants root people, so there's that CC, and you don't have to cast it, they'll cast it. It's on a 1-minute cooldown, so it's actually a viable ability right now. And they're up for 15 seconds, so you only have a 45-second downtime in between them being up. Now, it does also cast Wrath, and there's 3 trees, each of them casting 8k, for me, 8k Wraths for 15 seconds, you know, every 2 seconds, and that's in between them casting Entangling Roots, of course, and that they can do actually a tremendous amount of damage. They have a lot of burst. I've kind of experimented with them, and I'll try to put out a couple PvP videos of me using them, but it was just kind of clunky compared to using Incarnation. and that was only because I wasn't used to using treants. I'm sure if I played with them a bit more, I could use them in much more clutch situations, but overall, I didn't feel that they were as strong as Incarnation. Incarnation just gives me that burst, and it gives me that on-demand, oh shit mode, and people know not to fuck with me if I pop it. So Incarnation's the strongest. You can switch between Force of Nature and Incarnation. There is some, it looks like they're messing with Force of Nature a little bit more, so it may become even more viable than Incarnation here coming up in the next couple patches. But we'll see what happens. So Incarnation in this tree, definitely number one ability. You'll definitely want to use that. Now we go to the 5th tier. The 5th tier is level 75 talents. You have 3 talents. You have Disorient, and all these are very viable talents, by the way. Disorienting Roar, Ursul's Vortex, and Mighty Bash. Now, Disorienting Roar, it is a 30-second cooldown, which is very strong, and it disorients the enemy for 3 seconds. And that can be used in a multitude of ways. When you're in RBGs, it does everybody around you within 10 yards, so it can disorient the whole enemy team. It can save you, but it's only 3 seconds, so you need to find something you need to be able to do something in 3 seconds. It can also be used as an interrupt. I've seen it used as that quite a bit. It's a 30-second interrupt, basically, so you use that in between your solar beam being down. And overall, it's a pretty strong ability for PvP. It's mostly used by Resto Druids. I don't really mess with it outside of being a Resto Druid. And then we have Ursul's Vortex. Ursul's Vortex, obviously, for those of you that have played Boomkin in PvP or are familiar with Ursul's Vortex, it's probably the strongest in the whole tier. It's a 1-minute cooldown. It confers a vortex of wind on the ground at the destination, and it reduces movement speed of any enemies that walk through it by 8 yards or by 50%. And the first time an enemy attempts to get away from that area, whatever they do, it doesn't matter what they do, even druids, if they try to shapeshift out of it, they get sucked right back into it. And so it's really, really strong because you can combo that with your solar beam, and you can lock up a healer for about 8 seconds. 6 to 8 seconds easily. So the Ursul Vortex definitely a must-have, especially if you're solar beam comboing. And if you're a Boomkin and not running Ursul's Vortex in a team fight, people will just point and laugh at you and call you a retard. So I'm not saying that you have to take Ursul's Vortex. I'm strongly suggesting that you do take Ursul's Vortex if you get what I mean. So that is the strongest in that tier. The only other one is Mighty Bash, and that can be used in a multitude of different situations. It's mostly used for duels or 1v1 fights. You can also use it in 2s, depending on if you need that stun to stun somebody. But for the most part, Mighty Bash is it's a feral thing. You don't need Mighty Bash. It's really a feral or a guardian thing. You can also use it as a Resto Druid. They're pretty versatile in that tier, but as a Boomkin, Mighty Bash is not your strongest unless you are going to be dueling the fuck out of everybody. Then you really don't need Vortex, because Mighty Bash has a 50-second cooldown instead of a minute, and it stuns them for 5 seconds, which lets you just free cast. Now, the last tier, and some people may argue with me on this tier, I prefer if you didn't, but there's 3 talents. One of them is Heart of the Wild, which has a passive increase that increases your stamina, agility, and intellect by 6% at all times, so it's basically a permanent Mark of the Wild. But it stacks with your Mark of the Wild, of course. And then it also has a use effect, and if you use it, then it makes all your off specs stronger than if you were actually in that spec as a main spec. So it increases your healing by 100%, increases your damage in Guardian or Bear or Feral form by 100%. It makes you stronger in your other forms. Not really used by balance. It is a strong ability, and it's definitely used in PvE. But since the changes with Nature's Vigil is still the strongest in the tier. However, Heart of the Wild is a viable thing to choose. I just wouldn't pick it, especially in PvE, especially in PvP. That's only because there's not really a way to use it effectively as a balance, since you're already a DPS. You can use it to heal in a 2 situation, but Nature's Vigil is stronger than that. Now, in the second part of that, you have Dream of Cenarius. I've never used Dream of Cenarius. I know at the beginning of this expansion, it was actually the strongest ability to use in PvE. I just don't like the fact that I have to heal people to do damage, or heal people so I can get my next Moonfire or Sunfire spells to do 50% additional damage. It kind of just, it's not very strong to me, so I just kind of ditched it for a while, and I haven't really messed with it since the beginning of the expansion. It used to be a clicky, now it's a passive, or it used to be a usability, now it's a passive, so the strongest in your tier is definitely, guys, it's Nature's Vigil. Nature's Vigil is 100% the strongest ability. You should be using it in PvP. Over all the other abilities, Nature's Vigil is the strongest, and I'll tell you why. Now, it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. 1.5 minute, that throws off all your cooldowns. I know you guys fucking hate throwing off your cooldowns. I know I hate throwing off my cooldowns. But with that 1.5 minute cooldown, half the time, it lines up with trinkets. It lines up with your Starfall. You're able to use it in clutch situations where you need a heal. And as you'll see in my previous arena videos, and I've done this quite a bit, I will turn around and beat the fuck out of somebody as long as I have Nature's Vigil up. It heals me by 25% of all my damage. So basically all it says is, hey, Ziando, do a fuck ton of damage and you're fine. We'll love you forever. So all I do is I dot everything. I throw out any kind of damage I can. I don't care if I have to fucking switch to feral form and just start punching bitches with my claws. As long as I'm getting healing, that's all I care about. Nature's Vigil, strongest ability in this tier. I strongly suggest you take it. If you're not taking Nature's Vigil, you are gimping yourself, you are gimping your teammates, and overall, your DPS is not going to be very strong, unless you're in a PvE situation, but I think even PvEers use Nature's Vigil right now. Anyhow, so that is, as you can see, this is my tree, my secondary talents tree, and this is what I always take into the battlefield. The only exception is I switch between Mass Entanglement and Typhoon every now and again, but lately I just stick with Typhoon. That's the only thing that changes. Now, we'll go to Glyphs. Glyphs are pretty self-explanatory. Your minor Glyphs, of course, are situational, and whatever you choose. I always choose the Glyph of the Stars. I just don't like chicken form, guys. I know you guys love chicken. Some of you guys are just in love with chicken form. I hate it. I hate being in an RBG and being immediately targeted because they see a giant chicken. I figured if I'm in the star form, it's going to take them a little bit longer to figure out who the hell is not the Resto Druid, if there is a Resto Druid there. Then it would take them to find out, hey, kill the giant orange chicken, or hey, kill the giant purple chicken, or brown chicken, or whatever fucking variation of chicken you are. So, I find Glyph of the Stars to be the most beneficial to me. That, and I always hated when I played my Druid that I couldn't see my armor. I have a thing, I like to see my armor. I like to see what I'm wearing. I mean, I spent all this time getting this gear. I really want to see what I'm wearing. So anyway, that's why I use Glyph of the Stars. It's a minor glyph. You guys don't need to take it. It's preference, obviously. It's all about how I look. It's cosmetic. Anyhow, we'll go to major glyphs. Major glyphs. Glyph of the Solar Beam. If you guys are paying attention, they are planning on probably changing Glyph of the Solar Beam. Don't worry about that, though, guys. More than likely, it's going to be a DPS increase for us. But right now, it increases the radius of your Solar Beam by 100%. So for Season 13, Glyph of the Solar Beam is the way to go. And probably for seasons to come on, Glyph of the Solar Beam is still going to be a way to go. But Glyph of the Solar Beam, if you've ever cast Solar Beam outside of using the Glyph, you're just like, what the hell is that? And it just looks tiny. But when you use the Glyph, you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. I just called down God's Sun Ray, and I'm going to burn everybody in this thing. So Glyph of the Solar Beam, must have. You have to take it. Don't fight me on it. Go for it. Now, my other talent that I use is Glyph of the Barkskin. Another one. You can't debate using anything else. Glyph of Barkskin is something you have to take. It reduces the chance you'll be critically hit by 25% while Barkskin is active. You need to have it. It's the only thing that's going to save you from rogues. It's the only thing that's going to save you from DKs. It's definitely the only thing that'll save you from a warrior fucking up your day. Aside from running like a little bitch, which you guys will get very good at, and I'll put in my next few videos, and I'll demonstrate those. Now, the only other one I use, and this one is also non-debatable, and I know, guys, I'm not willing to budge on Boomkin glyphs, but these are all must-have glyphs. You can't switch these out. If Solar Beam gets changed, you can switch that one out if you want, but right now, these are must-haves. So the last one is Glyph of the Moon Beast, and that allows us to cast Healing Touch, Rejuvenate, Rebirth, Tranquility, all while in Moonkin form, so that means that we don't lose our armor gain that we get, or a damage reduction that we get, and we don't lose our spell haste, and we also don't lose our damage increase that we get from being in boomkin form, or moonkin form, whatever you guys want to call it. So those 3s are must-have. You must have those in your major glyph spots. There's not really a debate on those. Any skilled boomkin will tell you you have to have those. The only difference would be if you're playing PvE, but this isn't a PvE guide, guys. So for PvP, those 3, take them. Don't fight it. Take it. No does not mean no in this situation. It means yes. Put them in there. Alright, guys, so that is talents. That is glyphs. My specialization, of course, is boomkin, in case you hadn't figured that out yet. So that's how you do that. Now, we are going to go over rotation. And I'm just going to get all bat-like here. I don't normally play this zoomed in, guys, in case you guys cared. Which you probably don't. But PvP rotation, I've said in multiple of my videos, especially my random ponage series, or PvP rotation, I'm sorry. Super, super easy. You dot everything in sight. Pets, people, critters. It doesn't matter. If there's something that could give you a Star Surge proc, you dot it. Dot it immediately. Don't even think about it. Just hit it with both dots. Okay, and just make sure your dots are staying up permanently. That's the only thing. And then as you do this, okay, I'm going to dot all these, and you'll just see Star Surge procs. It's all about the Star Surge procs. And you'll see them come. Now, of course, you want to be in a clip state, which I am not in, because I'm a baddie. So in between combat, especially if you have your 4-set bonus, make sure you're using your Astral Communion to stay in a clip state at all times. Now, when you're focusing a target, you can't necessarily, of course, go off and dot everything. You're going to have to use your own intuition on your DPS group's ability to kill things. But when you're DPS on a target, or you're trying to burst something down, it's very important that you keep the mass dots up, because you want multiple Star Surge procs to proc. So the more dots you have out there, the more Star Surges you get, the more likely you're going to be able to kill somebody before they even realize it. I've had games, especially in RBGs, where we're focusing down a healer or anything else, and all I'm doing is just mass dotting everything, and then as soon as they say, hey, kill somebody, I switch over to them and just Star Surge, Star Surge, Star Surge, Star Surge. I've had 5 or 6 in a row, and people don't know what is happening to them when they have that many instant casts hitting them. So it's very important for your boomkin burst, especially when you're outside of your super boomkin form. So that's a thing. Now, speaking of super boomkin form, I will pour my macros here and we can go over that. Macro. Okay, those are all general macros, don't worry about that. So super boomkin form, for damage, I have my Nature's Vigil. My Nature's Vigil incarnation, boomkin form. Now what I do is I make sure that I pop gloves, because I have synapse springs, guys. For those of you that don't know, I run engineer. But anyhow, so I pop my trinket normally first, and then I pop berserking because I'm a troll, and then Nature's Vigil, and then incarnation of the Chosen of Elune. The reason I do this in this order is because I want Chosen of Elune to have all the buffs as quickly as possible before I actually cast Chosen of Elune. It doesn't make a difference if you put it in the front. It doesn't make a difference if you put it in the back. However, I have had times where I'm able to pop all of those abilities, which have a 1 minute to a minute and a half cooldown, and I can't get off Chosen of Elune because I get stunned in the middle of it. And all those other abilities will cast instantaneously, except for Chosen of Elune. You'll have to hit the button twice. Now, aside from that, that's my only DPS macro, is the one you see here. And the reason for that is because everything else is on a different cooldown. Nature's Vigil I have on my bar, of course, because it's on a minute and a half cooldown, so I can use it outside my macro, and I can use it outside my macro easily. And I don't have Starfall in there for obvious reasons. It comes on and off frequently enough that I don't need to do that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Now, I also have one other one, and this just because you're offensive, obviously. I have a Solar Beam macro, and this would go into your versatility aspect, and I will go over that in a future video. But Solar Beam macro is a must-have. You need to do you need to do /stop casting, and then /cast Solar Beam. And the reason you need to do this is because if you're in the middle of casting anything, it will immediately stop that cast, unless it's an instant cast, of course, because you have the GCD up. But it'll immediately stop that cast, and it'll just cast Solar Beam. You'll never have a problem casting Solar Beam when you need it unless you are CC'd. So that is a must-have Anybody that's had an interrupt has a stop cast macro, especially if they're a caster, because it's a must-have. You must have this ability or this macro. So that's the only other thing. The only other thing about DPS rotation is you want to pop Starfall, obviously, off of cooldown with Nature's Vigil off of cooldown. You don't want to pop Starfall without Nature's Vigil up. And you don't want to pop Nature's Vigil without Starfall up unless you're completely desperate. You'll have to kind of judge the situation. And obviously, you'll use your Trinket and Synapse Springs or whatever you may have off of cooldown as well. Starfall. Think about Starfall. You want to hit as many targets as possible, obviously. So in an RBG situation, you will pop Starfall whenever there's 3 or more, or 2 or more, depending on what the situation. If you're going on 2v1, you're popping Starfall. If you're going 2v2, you don't really have to worry about Starfall unless you're trying to get somewhere in a hurry. But you'll pretty much pop it only when there's 2 people around. But you can pop Starfall off a cooldown because you can force Starfall by Astral Communioning into Lunar State. So don't worry about that. I just pop it whenever it's up, pretty much. And I never pop Nature's Vigil without Starfall because it's a loss in healing, and it's just a loss in overall DPS from me. So my burst goes down a ton, in my opinion. And obviously, you'll have your Mass Dot going on as well. But for the most part, you will never cast. I cast Star Surge. That's just because when it crits, it hits really hard. But that's only when it's off a cooldown, and that's only if I have enough time to cast. I don't cast because there's so many interrupts in the game right now, guys. If you get locked out of Nature, that's going to screw you over for healing, and you'll instantly get gibbed. If you get locked out of Arcane, same thing. And then the only thing is, like on those 2 spells, 90% of the time they're not critting. I'm running a. What am I running? I'm running a crit chance. I'm at 15% crit, guys, and all my gear has crit on it. And at 15% in PvP gear, 90% of the time my Starfall and my Wrath are not critting, and when they do hit a fully resiled targets, their crits are for 40k. Now, in the time that it took me to cast a Wrath in 1.7 seconds, I can be casting Moonfire and Sunfire over and over again, and they are going to crit all the damn. They crit for me all the time, and they're hitting for 20k, so I'm going to make up for all that damage. And that's with full resilience. Normally they hit for about 20k when they crit, and I've had them crit multiple times in a row, so never underestimate Moonfire and Sunfire spam. Those are definitely very, very strong, and you will get kills off them. It just takes a little bit more to wean down somebody's health that way. But it's definitely very viable in PvP, and much more viable than actually trying to cast, because you'll just screw yourself over. So keep that in mind. And of course, Star Surge, guys, cast it off a cooldown. Always cast it. Never worry about not casting it. You can't really waste a Star Surge proc unless you're doing it on like a hunter pet and you're not actually trying to kill the hunter pet. But that's about it for that. I use Celestial Alignment, of course. I use that with my big cooldown button. I normally pop that with my Super Boomkin at the same time so I can ensure that I'm in my DPS, or that I'm in maximum, that I am using my maximum potential of the extra 25% damage. It also gives extra 25% to my Moonfire and my Sunfire, and they both hit the same time when I spam. So Super Boomkin you benefit huge from being in Celestial Alignment. I know a lot of you guys like to set up that very long cooldown for your overall, the 30 seconds of Starfall being up. But for PvE, that's awesome. For PvP, not viable. There's too much interrupts. There's too much CC. You're not going to pull that off. If you do pull that off, more power to you. But 90% of the time, as you've seen in my videos, I will pull off more damage than you every goddamn day than you trying to set up a damn 30-second Starfall CD. So, I wouldn't suggest doing that in PvP. It's just going to screw you over, and you'll just get pissed off more than you'll actually be able to actually concentrate on improving your own skills within the arena or BG. Anyhow, aside from that, that's how you DPS. Mushrooms aren't a viable source of DPS for the most part. They do very little damage, but they are good for a slow. And that's pretty much all your actual damaging abilities. Everything else, as far as defense and everything, I will cover in my future videos. Now, we will move on to stats. Oh, man. So, stat priority and reforging. Now, obviously, Intel is your strongest stat. I'm not going to tell you guys not to stack Intel. You shouldn't stack Intel for gemming. All your gear should have Intel on it. Then you should go for your hit cap, which is only 6%. As you'll see, I'm at 6.08%. That's only because I only need to be able to kill level 90 targets. I don't give a fuck about the rest of the targets, like you saw with the raid dummies I was missing. But you need to make sure you are stacking hit as much as possible. Not stacking hit, I apologize. You need to max your hit as quickly as possible for level 90 targets, which is just 6%. So once you get your 6%, then you can start focusing on your other abilities. You can get your 6% through Spirit, and I strongly suggest you do that if you can. If you can't, then you can go for hit, but Spirit obviously gives you mana regen, and believe it or not, you do run out of mana, especially in duels, and you'll also run out of it if people start focusing really, really hard in arenas and RBGs, just because you'll be shifting in and out of forms, and believe it or not, that shit still costs mana. So that is, so that's your first two. Now, after you get your hit cap, you start focusing on haste and crit. Now, everybody's like, oh, I just want to stack crit because crit gives me a whole bunch of freaking Star Surge procs, and they're amazing, and Star Surge procs all give a shit about. Who gives a fuck, okay? Haste. Haste is 100% more important than fucking crit. Now, they're on an equal... Haste and crit are equal as far as stat prioritizing. But if... Basically, as you see with this, if it has haste, then you reforge into crit, which this one I reforge into Spirit to get my hit cap. But if it has haste, you reforge into crit, and if it has crit, then you reforge into haste. Not from crit, but from whatever the other stat is. So this necklace, which I just picked up earlier today, it has crit and mastery, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch the mastery over to haste because I've already got my hit cap, and that way each of my gear, it's basically balancing out. The reason I say this is because as soon as you hit 17 to 18% haste, you get an extra dot tick off of your dots, which obviously increases your damage. It also increases the chances of you actually getting a Star Surge proc, guys. So it's very important that you pay attention to that. Haste is very, very important for you. Overall, it's going to increase your Starfall procs. It's going to increase your Star Surge procs. It's going to increase the amount of damage you do throughout the BG, especially with mass dotting. And it also increase the amount of Starfall, the Starfalls that go off, I guess. So I normally just stack as much haste as I can get. Like I said, haste and crit are equal, and as far as stat prioritizing goes. But overall, you want to make sure you get around about 17 to 18% haste. You'll probably be able to get a lot higher with this expansion, or with this season. But as you see, like, these are all terrible pieces for me to show you. Oh, okay, so this is the terrible piece. So here's my chest piece. I have haste and crit already on it. I needed spirit I needed hit, so I just reforged my crit into spirit because I'd rather have the haste. So haste takes a little bit of more of a priority over crit, but if it doesn't have crit, guys, then you go into haste. If it doesn't have haste, you go into crit, okay? And this only is if you are hit capped. So that's how stat prioritizing goes as far as reforging. It's really easy. You guys just have to kind of get used to it. If you need to, just look at my armory, look at my gear. You'll kind of see how I went as far as stat prioritizing my gear. Stacking crit really isn't a benefit to you, and I wouldn't gem crit. That's a terrible idea. Now that we're done with how to prioritize our actual gear, as far as stats is required, we're going to go over gems. Now, gems. Oh, gems. Alright, so gems. I normally try to match slots. Now, I try to do a half PvP power, half resilience build. And the reason I try to do this is because I am trying to maximize the amount of... I'm trying to find the in-between, because I do RBG and I also arena. So I try to find the in-between of not getting my ass completely fucked up. I'm sorry about that. So I'm trying to find the in-between between not getting my ass completely fucked up and not getting my ass completely broken and damaged. So overall, I would definitely go with resilience gems. All your yellow slots should be resilience gems. Your blue slots, I would just do resilience PvP gems. Or your blue slots, I'd do resilience PvP gems. And I'm a blacksmith, so I have 2 extra slots, and I just put PvP power in there. I wouldn't ever go pure PvP power on anything. These are extra slots, so I could do that. But overall, like my red slots, I put intel and PvP resilience. But every slot, every piece of gear has resilience in it. And that's just because I wanted to get up to a decent resilience where, as you've seen in my videos, I can actually take a hit and I don't have to constantly be running. And especially in arena situations, they are going to focus you. So you need to have that kind of resistance so you can get away from that. So just keep that in mind. I also run... I've been strictly running medallion, guys. I know I was saying earlier you could run dual trinkets, and I told a couple other people when they asked me for advice, run dual trinkets. The proc chance on the proc trinket is really, really shitty, and overall, the constant stat base that you get from haste and crit here, as well as just being able to remove any movement impairing effects, is definitely a lot stronger than you would get from the proc trinket. So keep an eye out for that. Now, I already went over macros. As far as gearing up goes, you guys will have to kind of judge it as you go. I normally try to just make sure I have I normally just pick up all my my 4-set, and then I just pick up anything that has crit and haste on it, and then I get my hit caps. That's how I gear up. And then for enchantments, I enchant haste on my gloves. I do a belt buckle on my belt. I did Intel Spirit on my pants, and that's just so I can get my hit cap without having to sacrifice a shit ton of crit or haste on one of my other pieces of gear, because 165 Spirit was an easy trade-off compared to what I would have had to trade off on the other pieces. I do 140 Mastery and minor run speed on my boots, Pandaren Step, and then nothing on rings. And then I do 165 Intel on my offhand, Jade Spirit on my main hand, 180 Intel on my bracers, 200 PvP resilience on my chest piece. That's pretty cheap enchant. 180 on my back piece, shoulder enchant, 200 Intel, 100 crit. If you guys obviously are inscription, then you get the better enchant. Obviously, all you guys, this will vary between what specs you have. Like if you have jewel crafting, then you'll have the jewel crafting gems in some of your slots. If you have blacksmithing, then you'll have extra slots to fill with gems. If you're enchanting, then you'll have your ring slots. You guys know how it goes. You guys have been playing long enough, I'm sure. Anyhow, that is damage. That's the damage section of how to play Boomkin. I'll try to kind of remake it a little bit later here, but this is just a general basis on how to actually play it from the damage side, how you guys should spec, how you guys should, basically fuck people up, for lack of a better term. If you guys have any questions, please send me follow me on Twitter, like my Facebook page, ask me questions there. I can answer those anywhere. I can't really answer them if you guys I do want you guys to comment, and I'll try to get to them as quickly as possible in the actual comments, but I can't get those on my phone and such, and I do have a job outside of World of Warcraft at the moment. So please follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. If you have any questions, ask me there. If you guys just want to leave some comments on the video, please do that down below. Like the video, favorite the video, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Thanks for watching, guys, and look for the other 5 parts of these videos coming up soon.